Hello everyone, Yensid Organist here, and welcome to another Minecraft video. I hope you guys are having a great day today. Map art in Minecraft is something that is a really cool way to add details to your builds, and it's something that a lot of YouTubers use. I know it's very popular on servers right now, particularly the Hermitcraft server. And it's something that I actually just recently finished a very large-scale map art project in my own survival world. As kind of the crowning point to my Spaceship Earth base, I created this 5x5 map of the Earth. And while I really enjoyed working on this project, it's definitely quite a time-intensive thing, especially if you're doing something like this in survival. And while there are a lot of great videos out there on YouTube that will tell you how to make map art, there aren't a lot of videos that really give you advice for doing a project like this in survival. And so that's why today I want to give you 5 tips for map art making in survival Minecraft that will hopefully make something like this a little bit easier for you if you decide to do this in your own world. The first piece of advice I can give you for creating map art in your own survival world is know the scope of the project. Minecraft maps are 8 chunks by 8 chunks, or 128 by 128 blocks. As you can see here, these little stone columns that I've put up show the area that a map will fill, and as you can see, it's a big area. As I said, it's 128 by 128. This translates to 16,384 blocks, or 256 stacks. So know going into this project that it's going to require a ton of resources, and those may require a lot of time just depending on the resources you want to use. The next piece of advice that I can give you is choose a location that might make your work a little bit easier. Obviously, I said that there are a ton of blocks that you need to gather, but if you want a solid background, there are actually a number of places in Minecraft where you can get that. The first option would be over an ocean. You can actually get a solid blue background. If that's something that you want, then you can add details on top of that. Obviously, the trouble with doing this is you're working on the surface of water, which is going to be a little bit more difficult if you want to place blocks in the middle of it, but it's definitely something that could reduce the number of blocks that you need. The one problem with ocean is that there are places where the color background is inconsistent depending on the floor below it, and also depending on where you go, you might actually have to deal with some terrain removing, so that may or may not be ideal. But most Minecraft oceans are large enough that you should be able to get a map that gives you a nice solid blue background. Another great place to get a solid color background that requires no work is the void in the end. And this is actually something that I used for a little bit of accent on one of my paths. The only trouble is that while the void looks black, on a map it actually turns up all gray. But if that's something that would be useful in your own world, then it's definitely something to consider. Obviously, then you're dealing with having to actually deal with the void, so that's another problem on its own. But if you don't mind the terrifying void and the threat of falling into it if you've got a good elytra and some rockets on you, then it's not too bad. And this project actually was not overly time-consuming and was a lot of fun to work on. Another option for a solid background that would require a little bit more work is to find an ice plains. Here you get a lot of snow, and you can find fairly flat terrain. This isn't quite the best example here, but this will give you a solid white background if you level the ground out. Once you've got your terrain leveled out in an ice plains, you can either wait for a snowstorm to cover your ground, or you can get an army of snow golems and drag them around by leads, and this will get your area covered fairly quickly in snow. It might take a little bit longer, but it's certainly a lot easier to work with. Obviously, the one thing that you do have to be careful is you can't use any kind of lighting in this area, otherwise your snow will melt. But for a project that this time consuming, I would definitely recommend bringing a bed and just sleeping through the night, and that way you don't have to deal with mobs. And so with a little bit of effort and a little bit of time, as you can see, we have a nice, pristine, white canvas to work from, and this is a great background for lots of different things that you can do. Now, if you decide that you want to completely fill the map in, then there's a couple other options that we have for working with terrain. So if you decide that you want to fill in the entire area, then what I recommend is finding the flattest area that you can. This is where I created all of the maps for the Earth map that I made, and desert is probably one of the easiest places to find a flat area. You can also get it in plains, but essentially somewhere you want that it doesn't require a ton of work to be able to clear out a flat space to work from. And this works a little bit better than the ocean because then you at least have a solid ground to work on. A couple other bonus little tips that I have is consider the cleanup. If you want all these resources back, I definitely recommend having a few beacons around. I have more beacons here than I actually need, but it will make cleaning things up a little bit easier. I also, because I was doing 25 different maps, I had a little bit of a sorting system here so that I could manage all my resources a little bit better. But this is a great way to do it if you're going to fill the entire thing in. And the one thing that's nice is the biome does not affect the colors. So even if you use like grass blocks in a desert and they have that little bit of a brownish hue to them, but when we put it on a map, it's the same green that it would be in any other biome, so you don't have to worry about the color when it comes to choosing your location. And speaking of color, understanding Minecraft's color palette and how it relates to maps is probably the biggest piece of advice that I can give you. Minecraft has a ton of blocks to choose from that really have quite a wide variety of hues and textures. And if we look at this, these are just some of the examples of the various different red blocks that we have in the game. We have wool, we have concrete powder, we have mushroom blocks, we have glazed terracotta, we have regular red terracotta, and we have redstone blocks, which from a distance has quite a variety of shades. When we look at the map, you can see that all but the terracotta and the redstone blocks have the exact same color. And so this is really important when it comes to figuring out what materials you want to use, because some things are much more difficult than others to acquire. Obviously, red mushrooms require a silk touch tool. Concrete and concrete powder require converting. However, if you are working on a flat surface, then you don't need to convert the concrete. Wool can be very difficult to gather in large quantities, whereas terracotta and glazed terracotta can be insta-mined if you have a beacon, and are some of the easier materials to acquire. And these are actually what I require. What I recommend for map art, because they're very easy to acquire. Obviously, you do have to smelt the terracotta, so you would have to sacrifice a little bit of resources on that to do all of that. But a lot of the terracottas are able to be obtained naturally if you have found a mesa. And they're very easy to clean up. That's what I was talking about with the beacons. If you have the beacon, it doesn't take much time at all. Concrete does not insta-mine with a beacon and takes a long time. And that was a mistake that I made in a couple of my earlier maps. I was using black concrete, and it took forever to be able to clean it up. Now, one of the other things that you need to deal with are shadows. If you look at the top row of this color palette up here, you'll notice there's a line that's a little bit lighter, and that's because if there is a drop off, it creates a little bit of a shadow. I want to show you something else that I've done. So if you want to work with that, one of the options that you have is to build your design up in a staircase, but this does definitely get a little bit cumbersome, so it's not something I recommend. The easiest thing to do is to simply have a border around the area that you are working in, and that will eliminate that shadow on the edge of the map. So let's take a look at another example of this. If we go over here, I have a whole bunch of different gray options. So we have stone, we have cobblestone, we have andesite, we have polished andesite, we have gravel, we have coal ore, we have iron ore, and we have acacia wood. Once again, a wide variety of materials, a wide variety of shades. When we look at the map, they're all the same. So it's really important to kind of get a feel for your color palette ahead of time. Play around with a little bit in creative, but I highly recommend things that you can Instamine either with a pick or with a shovel, because they will be the easiest to clean up and the easiest to work with. I'm not going to go through all of the blocks because that would take far too long, but this gives you a little bit of an idea and will allow you to kind of work through. But like I said, the terracotta and the glazed terracotta, I think, are the easiest to work with. I think they're some of the easiest items to obtain. And it doesn't matter which direction the terracotta is placed in. It'll all turn up to the same pixel when you get there. So now that we know where to build and what to build with, the question becomes, how do we know what we want to do? Now, if you're just going to freestyle your map art, then that's fine. But if you have an image that you'd like to recreate, there are a number of tools that are available to help convert your image into Minecraft blocks. And there are a number of different things out there. There are some websites that do it. There are some programs. I personally use Spritecraft, and I definitely recommend it, but like I said, there are other ones out there. It's a program, it's free to download, and I will include a link to it down in the description. And what it does is it allows you to import an image, and then it will convert that to Minecraft blocks. So I also recommend, because your map is 128 by 128, that you crop your image down to 128 by 128 pixels, and there are websites that will allow you to do that. Then what you can do is you can go in, you can choose your image, you will get a preview of it here. If you go to your options, this is where you have the choice to choose all the different blocks that you want, and so you can go through and you can use your terracottas, you can take out everything that you don't want. The one caveat that I will put out there with Spritecraft is it doesn't translate the blocks into what they will actually be on a map. So like the black glazed terracotta, while it would be just a black pixel, it doesn't quite read it that way. So you might have to make a few adjustments. You can also use your own resource pack. I haven't done that, but it is an option. You can choose side view or top view. This program is really meant for creating map art that's just going to be in the world, as opposed to something that is actually going to be placed on a map. But it definitely gets the job done. I used it for all the maps, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. So once you've chosen your palette, once you've got your image loaded, you can set your width and height here. We go ahead and click Create Blueprint, and that gives you everything you need. And then if you zoom in, you can see all of the different blocks that you need to create. From there, you can save the image, and you can also save the schematic, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But then it also comes with a very handy list of all the materials that you will need. So this is really, really useful for collecting everything that you're going to need for your project. And I actually, when I was doing this, I actually created an Excel spreadsheet where I kept track of all of this, because I would go out and gather resources for multiple maps at once. If you're just doing one map, then that's probably not necessary, but it's a really good way to keep track of that. So that's how you generate an image that you will be able to convert into a Minecraft map. The last tip that I have for you today is something that some people might not consider to be true survival. And if that's the case, then that is totally okay. I hope that I have given you tools up to this point to make your map art projects a little bit more bearable. This last tip that I have, though, involves use of a mod. And it's the Schematic Mod. It's called Litematica, and there is a version out there for 1.16, so it is available to use in the current version of Minecraft at the time I'm recording this video. And what it does is it allows you to place that schematic that we made either in Spratecraft or somewhere else into the world so that you have a template that you can follow. Now, I'm not going to go into how to install and use all of that. There are other great videos out there that will show you how to do that, and I will link those as well. But what we can do is, I've got the mod all loaded up. What we can do is we can load a schematic. We were working with, I think map 13 was the one we had just done. And we'll do that. It gives you a little warning because it didn't come from the mod. And then what we can do is, the stick is the tool you use, and click where we want to put it. For some reason, the Spratecraft, that's not right. The Spratecraft schematics come in upside down, so you have to rotate them, but then they will fit into place. And there you can see we now have the overlay of every block that we have in the game. And then what we can do is we can switch our game over to survival. And then I have all of my various resources in here, so we can just grab a few of these as an example. And how you kind of work with this mod is up to you. You know, it all depends on what your definition of true survival Minecraft is. So you have a few options, and this can make things go much faster. So it'll tell you which block you need to place. You can see it up in the corner, and you know, you can go through and just kind of scroll through whatever you need, and it'll tell you if you've placed the block correctly or not. Obviously, you can see, you know, this one is highlighted in red, and so it is wrong. You can also, you are able to pick block on these. So if, you know, you come to this and you pick block, it will put the correct one in your inventory, and that makes things a little bit faster. Again, it's up to you, you know, how you want to do that, you know, and then you can go in and do things that way. Now, with the glazed terracotta, which I was recommending, it gives you a specific placement. And you can configure the Litematica mod to ignore if it's in the correct direction or not. So, like, I think the primary setting is, like, if you place it in the wrong direction, it will mark it as wrong. You can tell it to ignore that. If all of this isn't going beyond my survival, there are a couple other things that I found that are really helpful. If you go into the configuration, there is an easy place mode and an easy place hold, and what this does is it allows you to right-click on a block, and it will automatically pop the correct block into your inventory as you go along, and it will make it so that you are able to place blocks much faster. You don't have to individually select them, and you can just kind of hold down your left mouse button and basically kind of paint them in. They're still coming out of your inventory, so it's not, you know, creative where, you know, you're pulling blocks out of that, but it's something that it can, you know, if this falls within your definition of survival, and it does for me, because basically it's just a little bit of an assist to be able to place things a lot faster, and it's especially useful if you're going, you know, if you're working with multiple maps. It just makes things a lot easier. One final little bonus tip for you. Once you have finished your map, make sure that you lock it in a cartography table and immediately make a copy of it and put that copy someplace safe, because if you lose that original, you'll have no way of getting it back once you take everything down. So those are the tips that I have for you today. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that you have found something a little bit useful in it for your own survival map art projects. Are there any tips that I missed that I should have included in this video? Anything that you have anything that you have found that would make doing map art in survival Minecraft easier? Please let me know that, and if there's enough good suggestions, maybe I will put together another video on that. Have you done any map art in your own world? I would love to see pictures. You can share them with me on social media. All of those sites are down in the description and on screen right now. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, I would encourage you to subscribe. Make sure you click that little notification bell so you can stay up to date on all my latest posts. Thanks for watching. See you real soon.